The most famous case Justice David Souter ever heard in his 19 years on the Supreme Court was, of course, Bush v. Gore, decided in the year 2000. Please join me in a cold shiver of remembrance. Justice Souter dissented from the ruling in that case, and it has been reported that he perceived the court's actions to be so transparently partisan in Bush v. Gore that he thought about quitting in the wake of the decision. In his book about the Supreme Court, The Nine, Jeffrey Toobin recounts Souter's reaction to Bush v. Gore this way. He says, quote, "Souter seriously considered resigning. For many months, it was not at all clear whether he would remain as a justice. At the urging of a handful of close friends, he decided to stay on, but his attitude toward the court was never the same. There were times when David Souter thought of Bush v. Gore and wept." Justice Souter has never publicly commented on Mr. Toobin's account, but Souter's friend, former U.S. Senator Warren Redmond, told the New Hampshire Union leader about that story, quote, "That's absolutely false. It's one of the great works of fiction. It's no secret that Souter wasn't pleased, but to say he was weeping and crying as well, I won't use the word in the newspaper." Joining us now is Jeffrey Rosen, law professor at George Washington University, legal affairs editor at the New Republic, and author of the great book, The Supreme Court, The Personalities and Rivalries That Defined America. Professor Rosen, thanks so much for joining us tonight.
Thanks for having me.
What do you know about Justice Souter's reaction to Bush v. Gore? We all know about his dissent in the case, but do we know anything about what sort of lasting or formative effect the ruling had on him?
The most concrete evidence we have is a note that he sent to the Oxford Alumni magazine, as it happens. Few people have picked this up, but soon after the decision, he wrote in, this is a magazine for Rhodes Scholars, and he said, "Out of all the things that have happened in my life recently, nothing has been as traumatic as Bush v. Gore." I'm paraphrasing, but he basically said, "I don't know if I'll ever be able to look at my colleagues in the same light again, and I'm not sure if I can ever recover from this." It was an incredibly candid and surprising confession of how distressed he was with that decision.
Has he ever made any account of, or have you ever been able to report any account of why he didn't quit? What might have persuaded him to stay if he was that distraught?
Well, of course, many of the justices were distraught. What's interesting is that Souter seemed to take it so much more personally than the others. He and Justice Stephen Breyer had tried at the last minute to do a compromise with Justice Anthony Kennedy that would have allowed the recount to continue. Breyer, who's a little more politically savvy, kind of brushed it off. The fact that Souter internalized it so much is a window onto this tender, sensitive, inner-directed 18th century man, as he's often called. But of course, you know, he thought about it. He didn't feel like quitting at the time. Really, from all accounts, what led him to quit wasn't Bush v. Gore, but the fact that he's always hated Washington. He wants to go hiking in New Hampshire while he's still young enough to do it. And you have to really admire the fact that he was not so hung up on Washington's status, and he was really willing to walk away from it. This was not his life, and that's a rare thing in the Capitol today.
One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you about Bush v. Gore is because I've been struck by President Obama's as yet quite vague discussions about what he's looking for in a Supreme Court justice. He's been talking about wanting somebody who's had real-world experience, somebody who understands the implications of their decisions in real Americans' lives, and that's led to a lot of speculation that he might choose someone who has run for office. I wonder how you see that dovetailing with what we know about Souter's grave distress over Bush v. Gore, which of course we know he saw as at least we assume that he saw as a partisan choice.
It's true. Obama has said explicitly, as you've suggested, that there has to be a justice who understands the effects of decisions on real Americans. And he cited as his model Chief Justice Earl Warren, the governor of California, who presided over the court that decided Brown versus Board of Education, because Warren understood the effect of segregation on real people's lives. I think you're right that Obama may have taken from the Bush v. Gore experience the danger of having these abstract ideologue justices who don't have an understanding of practical politics. Now, in practice, and also, as you suggest, you'd think maybe he would want to appoint a politician. When you look at the short list, though, it's surprising. The politicians who have been mentioned have sort of backed away, and the main people on the list are either former judges or the U.S. Solicitor General, Elena Kagan. So as much as Obama wants a politician or someone who has real-world experience, he may instead be driven to someone who is very brilliant and has a great judicial temperament, and mostly, unlike Souter, is not a stealth candidate. I think Obama may have been struck by the fact that Souter, although a brilliant judge and a great human being, was less effective inside and outside the court because he was so hermetically sealed. He really was a scholar at heart. And Obama might want someone who instead is able to persuade the fellow justices and really interact with them in political as well as legal terms.
Of course, the other great issue about Souter and his temperament and what was known about him before he became a justice is the issue of how much he disclosed to the Senate. Famously, he was sort of a great surprise to the administration that nominated him. We thought they were getting a real rock-ribbed New England conservative and ended up getting somebody who sided with the more liberal members of the court. Is there anything about Souter's tenure that has sort of changed the expectations about how disclosive potential justices should be to the Senate?
Certainly for Republicans, their mantra is now no more Souters. They said we don't want any more stealth candidates. And George W. Bush, whatever you might think about the many things he did, he learned that lesson and he appointed two justices, Roberts and Alito, who did not disappoint him, who were ideologically reliable movement conservatives. And in that sense, he got what he wanted. Now, if you read Souter's confirmation hearings or you watch them in retrospect, it's not like he was really hiding the ball. He said that his hero was Justice John Marshall Harlan, who's a sort of incrementalist conservative. He had warm words for William Brennan, the liberal lion, who he was replacing. So it's not like Souter was dishonest. But I think what the lesson of Souter is, for liberals as well as conservatives, is the seat is too important to pick someone precisely because we don't know about them. You have to have a clear sense of what their judicial vision is, what their temperament is, and in that sense, you're less likely to be surprised.
Jeffrey Rosen, law professor at George Washington University, legal affairs editor at the New Republic. I have a feeling over these next few weeks we're going to be calling you a lot. I hope you won't mind.
That'd be a pleasure. It's going to be a lot of fun and lots to talk about.
Yes, indeed. Thanks a lot. Have a great weekend.
Thank you.